We got a new Zag alert as Cade Orness is set to join the team next season. Could the North Kitsap all-time leading scorer develop into more than just a walk-on in Mark Few's system?
You are Locked On Zags, your daily podcast on the Gonzaga Bulldogs. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
What is going on, y'all? Welcome into the Locked On Zags podcast, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day. I'm your host and longtime Gonzaga podcaster, Andy Patton, here to bring you news and updates on all things Zag athletics. Today's episode of Locked On Zags is brought to you by Monopoly Go. Folks, I have a competitive side, and it is a big fan of Monopoly Go, the mobile hit twist on classic Monopoly. So join your friends and download Monopoly Go now free on the App Store or Google Play Store. Jam-packed episode here on Wednesday. Gonzaga president Thayne McCulloh is retiring after the upcoming academic year. We're going to talk about what that could mean for Gonzaga, specifically with regards to conference realignment. It's also Wednesday, which means it's WCC Wednesday. We got a couple more updates around the West Coast Conference, including a key player for San Diego entering the portal and a former St. Mary's Gale finding a new home. We'll get to that to close out the show. But first, we got a new Zag. Cade Orness is joining Gonzaga as a preferred walk-on. This came out shortly after I finished recording Tuesday's episode of Locked On Zags. We saw a report from Cade's father, who is the coach at North Kitsap High School and also a former Seattle U basketball player, indicating that his son Cade had chosen to come to Gonzaga. It was unclear from the initial reports if he was being offered a scholarship, what the situation was there. Eventually, we have kind of cleared through it all, and it sounds like Orness is joining the team as a preferred walk-on. Just for semantic purposes, there is a difference between a walk-on and a preferred walk-on. It's maybe intuitive, but I'll explain it quickly anyway. A walk-on would be somebody who quite literally comes to campus as a regular student and then ends up trying out for the team and walking on to the basketball team. A preferred walk-on effectively means that they are recruited, but not actually given a scholarship. They could eventually play their way onto a scholarship the way that some walk-ons in Gonzaga basketball history have done. Good example for those of you who have been Gonzaga fans for a decade plus. Mike Hart was a walk-on in the sense that he was a student who attended Gonzaga who happened to walk onto the basketball team, whereas David Stockton, who was in the same class, was a preferred walk-on in the sense that Mark Few and the Zags recruited him to come play basketball at Gonzaga just without giving him a scholarship. That is the case we have with Cade Orness right now. He is a preferred walk-on. He is not on scholarship. He is effectively replacing Colby Brooks, who we will talk about momentarily. But a little bit about Orness. He's a 6'4" guard from North Kitsap High School. He is, in fact, the all-time leading scorer in North Kitsap High School history with over 1,800 career points to his name. Dude is a certified bucket. He broke the record set by Jonas Latour, his former teammate, who had about 1,600 career points at North Kitsap. Latour went on to play at Seattle Pacific, where he still plays at the D3 level. And here Orness is now going to come to Gonzaga. He averaged over 20 points per game last year, was the Olympic League MVP, and helped this team finish third in the state tournament at the 2A level. One of the teams they beat in the high school tournament was Anacortes High School, where Davis Fogle, for those of you who listened to Tuesday's episode, you heard a whole bunch about Davis Fogle. He is a target for Gonzaga. They recently offered him a scholarship in the 2025 class. But Orness and North Kitsap knocked him out of the playoffs. So maybe Gonzaga got a chance to watch that and decided, hey, let's see if we can bring that kid over as well. And look, a walk-on is a walk-on. You expect that the playing time is going to be in garbage time, and for Mark Few's system, serious garbage time. There are players who get it, like the 9th, 10th man in the rotation will get in with 5-6 minutes to go in garbage times games. The walk-ons often don't come into the final 90 seconds. That's what we've seen from guys like Colby Brooks and guys like Joe Few, and in the past, guys like Rem Bakamis and Jack Beach and Brian Baskar, et cetera, et cetera. But for the kind of player that walk-ons typically are, we're talking about a guy who scored 1,800 points in high school. We're talking about a guard who is 6'4". There's some intrigue here. Not necessarily do we think he's going to push Luka Krajinovic for minutes right away type of intrigue, but intrigue nonetheless. This is not nothing. Gonzaga identified this player as somebody they wanted on their basketball team. They don't just do that for anybody. So I think that this is definitely a name to keep an eye on. We'll certainly see if he plays right away. Frequently, walk-ons do not even play in their first year. We saw that with Colby Brooks. We saw that with Abe Eagle, who came in with Colby Brooks. We saw that last year with Joaquim Reyes-Moore, who joined the team last year as a walk-on, did not play a single minute, but probably, maybe not guaranteed, but could potentially be a walk-on who plays some minutes for this team this year alongside Joe Few. And we talked about Colby Brooks, and I said we're going to mention him momentarily. That is because Colby Brooks is getting legitimate Division I basketball attention in the transfer portal. And for those of you who are on the Discord channel, you know that I've talked about Colby Brooks, and I kind of indicated that, hey, Will Graves is an example of a player who entered the transfer portal as a walk-on for Gonzaga, and he didn't get, I don't know how much D1 attention he got, but he ultimately ended up playing at Southern Oregon at the D3 level, and I kind of expected the same for Brooks. I said, hey, I know we like Colby Brooks. I know he's a talented player in the spurts that we've seen. I know he had a solid high school career, but I wouldn't expect Division I schools to pay him much attention in the transfer portal. And I was wrong. And I cannot tell you how happy I am to be wrong about that. I think it'd be incredibly cool to see Colby Brooks play at the Division I level next year. And according to Tobias Bass of The Athletic, he says that Colby Brooks has heard from the following programs since entering the transfer portal: Drake, who literally made the NCAA tournament last year, Portland State, Denver, Cal State Fullerton, and Cal Poly. So 5 Division I programs, including an NCAA tournament team, have reached out to Colby Brooks. Again, reaching out is a very vague term intentionally. Don't know whether that connection is just, hey, glad to see you're here, Colby, we'll keep you in mind. If some of the other players we're pursuing falls through, we'll reach out again. That could be the connection. It could also be, hey, we're very interested in having you come to campus. We'd love to set up a visit, and potentially have you come into this team right away. Like there's a big difference between those two types of communication, and yet they're going to be labeled the same here. So maybe one of these schools is kind of just reaching out to them as a, hey, we have you on our radar as a backup plan, whereas some of these other schools are like, we would love to bring you to campus this weekend. And we probably won't know the distinction between those until we start hearing that, hey, Colby Brooks is going down to San Luis Obispo and he's visiting Cal Poly, or he's going to Portland and he's checking out the Vikings program, or whatever it may be. Brooks, for the record, is from LA. He went to Loyola High School. He played AAU travel basketball with Nick Kamenia, a target for Gonzaga in the 2025 recruiting class. So he's played AAU ball. He played at a competitive high school in the Los Angeles area. He's a 6'7", 215-pound athlete. We've seen him throw down some thunderous dunks in warmups. We know he's got the athleticism to play at this level. We know he's got the size to play at this level. He's got a sweet stroke with the left-handed shot. He played 22 games for Gonzaga over the last 2 seasons, 3 minutes per game. Again, all of them coming in garbage time. Averaged 1.6 points, 1.1 boards, and 0.1 steals. Effectively, he had 35 points. 35 points in 22 games at Gonzaga, 25 rebounds, 2 steals, and an assist. He took 23 two-point attempts and made 12 of them. That's about 52%. He was 1 of 3 from the three-point line, and he was 57%, 8 of 14 from the free throw line. None of those samples mean much of anything other than just to put a fine point on what his Gonzaga basketball career officially looked like. But like I said, happy to be wrong that Colby Brooks is getting Division I basketball attention. Would absolutely love for him to end up at any of these schools. If he ends up at Portland State, I will make it out to a game to see him, since I only live about half an hour from Portland State's campus. If he makes it out to Cal Poly, one of my good friends works there, so that would be very cool to see him play there. If he makes it out to Denver, I got another friend who works in the compliance office at Denver, so a lot of connections personally for me with some of the schools that are on this list. Would absolutely love to see Colby Brooks end up playing D1 basketball. I think that would be incredibly cool, and looking forward to continuing to track his career, even if it's no longer going to be at Gonzaga. Well, Gonzaga's longtime president, Thayne McCulloh, he is retiring after the upcoming season, or year, academic year, I should say, not season. What does it mean for Gonzaga? Specifically, what does it mean for them and their quest for conference realignment? We're going to talk about that in just a second. Right after I tell you that today's episode is brought to you by FanDuel. Folks, it is playoff time in both the NBA and the NHL. Baseball is in full swing, and FanDuel is your place to bet on every single game. Right now, new customers will get $150 in bonus bets guaranteed. That's $150 win or lose. So you can bet on everything from slap shots to home runs to slam dunks, all on an app that is safe, secure, and super easy to use. And Gonzaga right now on FanDuel plus 2,500 to win the 2025 national championship. Folks, when the season ended, they were plus 3,000. Their odds are already getting better, which means you're missing out on capitalizing on that income. If you want to toss some cash down, then what are you waiting for? Visit FanDuel.com/lockedon and make your first bet an automatic W. FanDuel, America's #1 sportsbook. All right, folks, segment 2, still Andy Patton, still Locked On Zags podcast, and we are talking Gonzaga president Thayne McCulloh has announced that he is retiring at the end of the 2024-25 academic school year. So about a little over 1 year from now will be the conclusion of what has been a 30-plus year career at the university. He has been there since 1989, I believe, is what I saw in the press release that we got. So somebody who's been involved with this school for a very long time. He started as the president officially in my freshman year at Gonzaga. So I have a very close connection with Thayne. He was our speaker of our senior year commencement. I know a lot of people who are in my class will remember that we felt like we wanted somebody a little bit more prestigious. Initially, I believe Desmond Tutu was the speaker for the class before us. So people were like, well, we're just going to get Thayne. And I remember Thayne sent out a nice email to our class and said, I have a specific affinity and closeness to this class. You were freshmen my first year as president, and I want to be able to kind of see you out the door. And I remember that has still stuck with me as a nice communication from Thayne to us, somebody that just, I think, really got it and really understood Gonzaga. And I could wax poetic about him and his place in Gonzaga history, one of the longest tenured presidents in the school's history. But I do want to keep this focused on the athletic side of things and acknowledge that Thayne was a big part of Gonzaga's athletic success over the last couple of decades. He has helped lead this program to unprecedented athletic success. He was in charge for many new buildings that have gone on campus. Some of them, student focused, not athletic focused, like the new Hemmingson Center, new Student Center, all the other stuff that has gone on in the academic side. He also was in charge of the Volcar Center, the new athletic training facility that we have on campus. So has really kind of helped propel this program forward in eras of uncertainty to help navigate the school through the COVID-19 pandemic and everything that came along with that. But I think an area that merits extra attention here is that Thayne was the first non-Jesuit president in school history. And that's relevant for a couple of reasons. One, it'll be interesting to see if Gonzaga chooses to continue to pursue candidates who are not Jesuits, or whether the board specifically goes back to Jesuit and feels like it has to be a priest, it has to be somebody Jesuit affiliated, what kind of direction they potentially go. Hopefully they'll just pick best candidate available regardless of whether they are Jesuit or not, but it is a thing to pay attention to, not just for like alumni of the school who are invested and involved in the school's future, but it does matter for Gonzaga athletics because of one reason. And I'm quoting my friend, Spencer McLaughlin, the host of the Locked On Oregon Ducks podcast, as well as the former host of the Locked On Pac-12 podcast. He's now the host of the Locked On College Football podcast. If you are a college football fan, definitely check out Locked On College Football. But while he was hosting Locked On Pac-12, he frequently used this phrase to the point where he joked that he would put it on his gravestone: Presidents vote on conference realignment. And I think that is a really important acknowledgement in general, but certainly right now for Gonzaga. Presidents vote on realignment, not head coaches, not fans, not boosters, not even athletic directors. Presidents vote on conference realignment. So for Gonzaga, where right now there is there's not a lot of conversation around conference realignment. It has stalled out. The academic and athletic school year just is completing, is working on finishing right now. These conversations happen over the summer. So we're not surprised that there's not a lot of conversation right now. But if it is to pick up, it could potentially be a situation where the person voting on whether Gonzaga is going to join a new conference is not Thayne McCulloh. And it could, in fact, be somebody who is more closely connected to the church. And that could have relevance, because the Big 12 is not a religiously affiliated conference by any stretch of the imagination. The Big East is. And that could be relevant. It could matter. Of course, there's other factors here. Thayne's going to be here for another 15 months or so. So if realignment were to pick up in a significant way, could Thayne then be asked to vote on conference realignment. If things start to come together and the Big East is making an offer, the Big 12, we know that the Big 12 absolutely loves Gonzaga and has continued to try to push them. Brett Yormark, their commissioner, loves Gonzaga. Some of the schools not as much in love with Gonzaga, but if they felt like they could get the numbers, which, to be clear, I think is unlikely. I think the Big 12 is going to wait a full year of getting these new schools in Arizona, Arizona State, Utah, Colorado, and figure out what they have with their brand new mega monster conference before they look at adding any more schools. I think that's what they're going to do. But if there was a push to try to get Gonzaga in sooner, would Thayne vote on it? Would he abstain? Could that cause problems where he says, hey, I don't want to vote since I'm retiring at the end of the year. Somebody else should do it. But the Big 12 is not going to wait for that. Like, these are situations that could happen. I don't know that they will. I think in the Big 12 situation, it's pretty unlikely. But I've mentioned this before, and I'll say it again. The Big East is in the middle of negotiating a new media rights deal as their current one expires in 2025. What I suspect the Big East is going to find out is that in order to drive up the price of their product between Fox and ESPN and whoever else could get involved in the bidding there, Gonzaga is a value add. Gonzaga has a tremendous amount of TV power. That has been proven time and time again. People watch Gonzaga when they're on TV. You can argue anything else that you want. That is a fact, a verifiable fact about Gonzaga basketball. People watch them when they're on TV. And that is what matters right now. Yeah, UConn's got back-to-back national championships. That's great. If the Big East wants more people to watch their basketball, adding Gonzaga would do that. Are they going to be willing to do that with the added, expenses of travel and various other things? Is Gonzaga going to want to do that? There's a whole bunch of other factors outside of that. But my suspicion is that because Gonzaga has this amount of authority with how much people watch their product on TV, and because the Big East is negotiating a new deal, these sides are going to talk. There's going to be conversation. It would be malpractice on Val Ackerman's spot as the Big East commissioner if she didn't do this, if she didn't have these conversations. Likewise, it would be malpractice for Gonzaga to not even consider it without looking heavily at the pros and cons. And all of this could happen with a president transferring in and out of Gonzaga, with a leadership movement for the university. And that is something to keep an eye on. Again, it might not mean anything. Nothing might come of this. But when I see that Thayne is leaving, it is hard to not think about that in that context. If a Jesuit Catholic person becomes the new president of Gonzaga, are they going to say no to the Big 12? Are they going to limit Gonzaga's potential options? Is the Big East going to become the likely scenario? What does this mean for all of that? That's kind of where we're at right now. And again, there's not a lot of conversations happening around conference realignment. I don't want to stir up something. It's pretty dead right now. And I think it's dead because of the time of year, not because people are no longer interested in Gonzaga. That may well be the case, but I think that the reason we're not hearing any conversation right now is just purely time of year based. But when these conversations pick up again, what does it mean for Gonzaga that they're having a transitional year with their leadership? Because it doesn't mean nothing. It definitely will have some impact on this potential future for Gonzaga in terms of conference realignment. Switching gears to close out the show, Joshua Jefferson. He left St. Mary's a few weeks ago. He is now officially committed to TJ Otzelberger and the Iowa State Cyclones. Key piece for San Diego has hit the transfer portal. We got all that coming up in just a second. Right after I tell you that today's episode of Locked On Zags is brought to you by Monopoly Go. Folks, I've been told that I am a competitive person. You know what? It's true. I am. I have a competitive side just like everybody else, and my competitive side is a big fan of Monopoly Go. I'm sure you've heard of it. It's been downloaded over 150 million times. It is a great twist on Monopoly where you play on not one, but hundreds of different Monopoly boards in crazy locations, building up amazing cities that bring you big money. But the best part is you can mess with your friends. I can charge them rent on my iconic properties, just like classic Monopoly. But now I can also rob their vaults of riches for myself. All the leaderboards show me who the biggest Monopoly tycoon is. But it's not just my competitive side that loves it. You can team up with friends and people all around the world in timed tournaments to earn huge rewards. So get in the game and join your friends. Download Monopoly Go now free on the App Store or the Google Play Store. Today's episode of Locked On Zags is also brought to you by Game Time. Folks, the weather is heating up out here in the Pacific Northwest, and that means it's time to go take in some Major League Baseball games. And great news, Game Time is now an authorized ticket marketplace of Major League Baseball, which makes getting tickets even faster and easier. Priced on the Game Time app, they actually go down. the closer it gets to first pitch. So with killer last-minute deals, all-in prices, views from your seat, and Game Time's lowest price guarantee, Game Time takes the guesswork out of buying MLB tickets. One of my favorite features they have is their last-minute deals, where you can save up to 60% off by buying last minutes for not just sports, but comedy, concerts, theater, and more. And for those of you who often worry about your tickets not being real, Game Time's ticket coverage is covered by the most flexible customer service policy in the entire ticketing industry. I love having that peace of mind. So take the guesswork out of buying tickets with Game Time. Download the Game Time app, create an account, and use code LOCKEDONCollege for $20 off your first purchase. Terms apply. Again, create an account, redeem code LOCKEDONCollege for $20 off. Download Game Time today. Last minute tickets, lowest prices, guaranteed. All right, folks, closing the show today, talking about a handful of WCC updates. We did this on Tuesday's show, but of course, it is a daily thing going on here in college basketball as we are having transfers, players committing to the portal, players committing to new schools in the portal, players returning to school. Literally daily, we are having new stuff going on, and that is true of every conference, including the WCC. So while we talked about a handful of updates on Tuesday's show, today we're talking Joshua Jefferson. Rising junior forward from St. Mary's. He was a bit player as a freshman. He broke out in a big way as a sophomore last year. 10.2 points, 6.5 rebounds for Randy Bennett's team playing that stretch 4 role. He entered the transfer portal shortly at the conclusion of the season after missing the last few weeks of the year with a knee injury. And there was a lot of rumors that he would end up at Iowa State going into the Big 12, playing for the Cyclones and Coach TJ Otzelberger. Well, he finally confirmed those rumors by announcing that he is transferring to Ohio State. And look, this is a really nice fit for Joshua Jefferson. I'm disappointed that talent is leaving St. Mary's. It's not good for St. Mary's, of course. It's not good for Gonzaga. It's not good for the WCC. It's not good for mid-majors. It's arguably not good for college basketball. And I stand by that, and I still believe that. But Joshua Jefferson, going from St. Mary's to Iowa State, it's a really nice fit for him. This Iowa State team is going to be a top 5 team in college basketball next year. I can almost guarantee it. They're returning most of their key pieces, some key freshmen coming back for their sophomore years. And one of the big things they needed was some more defensive enforcement around the rim, some more just athletes who can play defense. And Joshua Jefferson is that. He's going into a system where his defensive abilities are going to be well recognized, where his athleticism is going to allow him to thrive. And he's going into a system, as most systems in college basketball are, that plays at a faster pace than St. Mary's. He's going to get more touches. He's going to get more opportunities to score the basketball. They had, I think, something like 170 more fast break opportunities at Iowa State last year than St. Mary's. They get out, they go, they run. They're not a super fast-paced offense, but again, almost every offense is faster paced than St. Mary's. So you're going to see him get more opportunities to score, even in a team where he's surrounded by better offensive players at Iowa State than he was at St. Mary's. I suspect that Jefferson will have more scoring opportunities just because of the style of play that is different. I think he's going to be a big-time defensive player. I think there's going to be a bit of a challenge moving into the Big 12. More physical players that you go up against. The Big 12 is very deep, very physical, very talented conference. But I think this is a really nice fit for Joshua Jefferson. Sad to see him go. Loved his game, loved what he did again. I mean, he hurt Gonzaga badly on that game in Spokane in February, but now he gets an opportunity to play at a big-time program for a big-time coach, a team that has legitimate national championship aspirations. Speaking of teams that have national championship aspirations and former St. Mary's players, Aidan Mahaney has not committed as of this recording, as I'm talking to you right now, but he is considering a handful of schools, and one of them is the UConn Huskies. I don't know if I love the fit for Mahaney at UConn. Stylistically, it's a huge jump. It's a huge difference from what the style he plays offensively at St. Mary's versus the style he would play at UConn. That's not to say I think he's completely incapable. More so of that's a big risk. It's a risk for him to go, like obviously anybody would want to go play at UConn right now, and there's playing time to be had, but there's a risk that it doesn't work, that he doesn't adjust to that system well, and that maybe he's less efficient. I mean, his efficiency numbers are already kind of questionable at best right now. So a switch to UConn where he gets more shots up, I don't know if I love it. He's also considering Creighton. I like that a little bit more so. Depends who comes back. If Stephen Ashworth and Trey Alexander both come back, there's not as much room for Mahaney in that backcourt, but certainly he's got a ton of talent around him, which I think helps mitigate some of those concerns we might have about him shooting-wise. He's also reportedly considering Virginia, which is frankly hilarious. if he were to go from a very slow-paced offensive team coached by Bennett to Virginia, where it is a very slow-paced offensive team coached by Bennett, it's just humorous. It's actually a good fit for him. If he were to go to Virginia, I think he would thrive there. It would be, again, a similar system. They're not exactly the same. Tony and Randy Bennett are not related, and their system is not necessarily related. They just both happen to play very slow, defensive-focused styles. But I do think Aidan Mahaney would do well at Virginia. I think he's capable of being a starting guard in the ACC. I think he's capable of being a starting guard at Virginia, and I think that could work out well for him. Creighton, solid fit as well. UConn, I'm a little bit more skeptical, but I will say both UConn and Creighton have the ability for him to play Gonzaga next year. Obviously, if he goes to UConn, they will match up with Gonzaga at the Madison Square Garden. Creighton is in the battle for Atlantis alongside Gonzaga, so they could end up squaring off there as well. Last update here on the WCC is about Kevin Patton, no relation. He is a 6'8" freshman who spent his first year at San Diego, and he is now in the transfer portal, joining Wayne McKinney and Deuce Turner. That's the three best players for Steve Lavin and the Toreros are now officially in the transfer portal. I was a little surprised Kevin Patton hadn't entered the transfer portal yet, similar to how I felt about Tyler Harris, the star shooting guard, 6'8" guard for Portland. Tyler Harris and Kevin Patton were both true freshmen in the conference last year, oversized guards who were very, very productive. And in different era, those guys would both become future stars at Portland and San Diego. They would graduate in 4 years, maybe 3 years if they decided to leave early and pursue a professional career, but they would be all-time greats at Portland and San Diego. Now, unfortunately, they just spend 1 year there. And look, I don't blame them at all. I don't blame them at all. Both are from California. Both could legitimately get looks from schools like USC, UCLA. Both could get looks from schools that aren't in California too, like other legitimate high major programs. Both these guys are very capable of playing big time minutes for a program in the Big 12, Big 10, SEC, ACC, whatever it may be. And now when you're in an era where you can leave and go do that and get paid, why wouldn't you do that? I get it for them, but I'm gutted for these programs. Portland has lost everybody on their roster. San Diego, like we said, has lost their three best players in Turner and McKinney and now Kevin Patton. Kevin Patton was really productive for the Toreros last year, averaged about 10 points, 4.5 boards, 2.5 assists. He also averaged 1.3 steals and 1.3 blocks. Really good defensive player. I don't think he's going to follow Joshua Jefferson to Iowa State, but if he finds a system that is going to reward his defensive prowess while giving him opportunities to score, that could be a really good fit. I mean, Virginia might be a good fit for him too, defensively, just because of what he's able to bring on that end of the floor. So very intrigued by where Kevin Patton ends up. Very intrigued by where Tyler Harris ends up, but sad that neither of those players will remain in the WCC. And also just kind of wondering how Steve Lavin's feeling right now. He was a longtime head coach at UCLA at St. John's, took 7 years off, comes back, coaches at San Diego, has a very, very good second year after a rough first season, has this great second year, and now all three of his best players leave. That's got to feel incredibly deflating and a harsh reminder of the new era of college basketball for somebody who did the majority of his coaching in the previous era. It's going to wrap it up for us today here on the Locked On Zags podcast. Thank you so much to those of you who have made this show your first listen or your first watch of the day. We're going to close out the show with more of our season in review series, talk about every player on Gonzaga's roster, how their season went last year, comparing it to their best and worst case scenarios, and looking ahead to their future. So look out for those on Thursday and Friday's episodes. Thanks again, and until next time, as always, go Zags.